All right, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We're about ready to get started. Thank you all for coming today to attend this deep dive session. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our speaker today, Julio Contreras.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you taking the time out of the multiple sessions happening right now and being able to come and let's talk a little bit more around supporting principal instructional leadership. I want to start with first things first. You matter. Like the work that happens in our classrooms for our students and with our teachers happens only because of you. And without you doing the work that you're doing, like, we wouldn't be getting the results that we're getting. So I just want to say thank you on behalf of our students and our parents, and be mindful of that. I am up here not as an expert. I am up here as a practitioner of the work with you. And I look forward to having a conversation about what's worked for me, where I have stumbled, where I have fallen, and figured out like what are some of the Band-Aid solutions and what have actually become some real long-term solutions as a part of my practice now. Just to share a little bit more about myself, so my name is Julio César Contreras, and I go by JC. This is my kindergarten picture. And my parents were born in Mexico. My mom went to school up until 3rd grade, and my dad went to school till 5th grade. They moved and met in the great city of Aurora, Illinois. Yeah, we're famous for Wayne's World. I struggled from elementary, middle school, and high school with similar challenges that our students are struggling with: cultural identity, language identity. What does academic excellence look like? For us, just graduating was a great bar of excellence within the household, but I was fortunate to intersect with at least 3 very important teachers, and these are the people that helped me push beyond. So I made it into my local community college. From there, I pursued education because I wanted to pass on the opportunity of trajectory for all students. Went back and taught at my old elementary school. And then from there, I really felt like I needed more support as a teacher. And so I had the honor of joining Chicago Public Schools, started there as a teacher. And I thought I was gonna leave in 2 years. Intersected with a great mentor of mine, Dr. Antonio Acevedo. He's recently received his doctorate. Congratulations to him. And he's the one that also helped propel me into get into leadership. We need people like you also supporting other teachers to grow. So I pursued my master's, traveling back to Aurora, stayed with Chicago Public Schools, moved into becoming an assistant principal, becoming a director of operations for a region, then became a principal, and then was tapped on to serve as a deputy chief of schools, supporting within our portfolio. We had in my first year 35 schools. Our second year we had 31 schools. And as you can imagine, there's a lot of responding, but we have to get ahead of the work. From there, I had the pleasure of moving to Tulsa, Oklahoma, and there served as a principal supervisor. We know them as instructional leadership directors, and really had a chance to hone in on doing the work side by side with principals, getting into classrooms, looking at the actual artifact that students are producing, and at the same time, stepping to the side and really looking at how is my principal doing this work, and what is the skill I need to help fill in for them. So then started to think about, I need to start developing plans for my principals also, not just for them to solve for students, but so that they can actually become stronger leaders and become a developer of other leaders, which are their assistant principals, and then their grade team leaders. I joined Relay Graduate School of Education. Some of you may have heard of them. They have great curriculum. I joined them to serve as the founding dean for our campus in San Antonio. And soon after, really found myself missing the intersection with students and leaders in the classroom. And that took me to KIPP San Antonio. And I have now where I serve. And I have the pleasure of, with a ratio of 3 schools, I lead 2 dual language elementary schools and 1 middle school. But in all that time, I have been able to just narrow in now closer into what does my time look like when I'm with my principals in the school. So, just for a quick reference point, if you could just raise your hands, I'm curious just to get perspective of the room. How many of us are current assistant principals or current sitting principals? Great, great. How many of us are principal supervisors? Wonderful, wonderful. We're around like eight to 10 on those. We had maybe around like 40 principals. How many of us are actually like district office, whether you're a superintendent or you're leading a different department? Great, great, wonderful. So it's good. Like it's great to see multiple leaders in the same space. The question. I had the pleasure of learning from a chief in Chicago, and the biggest thing that I was led into is thinking about when you're going to meet with principals, what are you spending your time around? The biggest thing is for us narrowing, like my principals know that I am going to be inspecting, like, how are they planning in their calendar? Which are the teachers that they're actually visiting? I make sure that I walk classrooms prior to also walking them with my school leader, with the principal, excuse me. I make sure that I look at the data prior to also looking at the data with my principal or my assistant principal, because I need that moment to be a teaching moment, not a discovery moment together. The other bigger piece is that when we're walking around through the school, we're either spending time in looking at culture in the hallway and in the school environment, and at the same time then as we go into the classrooms, zooming in on what is the student doing, what is the teacher doing, and I'm also looking at how is the principal collecting real-time data about what's happening in the classroom. One of the things that I mentioned in 2016 is when I go to a school, I intentionally set up time under 3 different categories. Like what is happening with the student? So let's look at the work, let's look at the school data points, what's happening with the school. It could be budgeting, it could be community involvement, it could be extracurricular programming, and at the same time, the third one, which you will see in each one of these key levers, is time for the leader. This is where I get to unpack with the leader, tell me about why you made this specific decision. And from there, I am already thinking about, is this going to be a moment that I am going to be very directive in teaching how to get to the solution, or am I going to step to the side and become more collaborative or more transformative in the conversation with the principal? One of the resources that I anchor off of is blended coaching. This book allows us to really be mindful about how are we couching and framing conversation. I see some heads nodding in this room also. It really provides a framework for thinking and thinking about how to engage with the principal, but not take over the conversation for them, and ultimately like remove the cognitive lift from them. If there's one thing that I really would like for you to walk away with today, it would be this acronym, which is TMI, but I want us to unpack it in a different way. And it's the most important thing that you can do with your principal that I have found to be very helpful for me as a principal and with the principals that I'm currently supporting is make sure that we norm and understand what does excellence look like, sound like, in any aspect that we are pursuing as a school. It could be off of the teacher rubric. It could be off of our data points that we're looking into literacy or Lexile levels. Or the other piece then is modeling. The modeling really requires, like when I'm with my schools, I have time in my calendar with them that says, all right, we're gonna go into this classroom and we're going to look for this work. If this is in the beginning of the year, I ask my principal, like, watch me and then let's unpack like what happened to serve as the model. This is a principal. I do take into high consideration what is the experience and the knowledge of the leader. Similar to how we support teachers, I tier them. Like, is this someone that's newer to the craft? Is this someone that just needs some foundational guidance, or is this someone that I can actually just sit back and not sit back, but be on the sidelines and actually learning about how to refine the actual practice of, like, when you're going in and checking in with students, what's the conversation you're having with the student? Like, what's the artifact you pick up and why? The last piece is the inspect what you expect. And that just really goes back, like, in my first years of serving as a principal supervisor, I cannot explain to you how many times I started by not letting my principal know what I was gonna be focusing on when I visited, by not having a document to capture our conversation, by not having a framework where our conversation was then guided and included, we're going to walk through the classroom to inspect what we are talking about in this conversation. I sit in with my principals also when they are having their one-on-one conversations with their assistant school principals. When a principal also sits with the assistant school principal who is coaching a teacher, I also make time to sit with them. And those have been some of the more powerful moments to be able to give them like real-time feedback and actual concrete data that helps them become a stronger developer. So I really would love for you to think about like, how do you incorporate TMI, teach, model, inspect, into your craft? The biggest challenge is what I call the white noise. I still go to schools and I still get pulled into multiple directions, and I see my principals being pulled into multiple directions. The best way to protect around this, I have found, is by starting the conversation with student achievement data. This also takes managing up. Like my district leaders are also aware that we are going in to strengthen instructional leadership for our school leaders, our principals. And so what that requires is that when someone is reaching out to the school to ask for a form to be filled out or to ask for a meeting to discuss a new initiative, they're conscious that the request is actually keeping the principal from being in the classroom or being side by side with an assistant principal. And so what we have started to do is, as a district, because part of this conversation also requires that we are having conversations at a district level, is that we are talking about at least one day a week, we set up time to learn about what are the requests that are going towards principals and who's gonna be the owner and who's gonna be the person that follows up to it. So what we've been able to do is reduce some of the white noise. We still have it, but we also then go back and look at what are the roles, responsibilities, and job functions that people have from our central office staff to within school leadership, and make sure that the work gets pushed to the right person. Another note that I would really like to state is, I think about the work as supporting principals, that we have to be on the ground, able to do the work. You know, one of the leaders recognized here mentioned that you have to be the first teacher. And so I believe that you can learn the work of being a strong principal supervisor and a strong principal coach for your principal, but most importantly, you have to be aware about what does great instruction look like. So there has to be arms locked in with our curriculum department leaders, with our instructional coaches, to be able to know what is the practices that our leaders are looking for, and that the actual work is rigorous for our students. I also guide my principals to think about, like, how do you move from the ground floor to also being in the main balcony? And that's where you're actually still seeing and you're involved in the work. Like you're verbally, like, this is where we're doing a lot of the work with our assistant principals. Like, how are you getting impacts through results through other people? I asked them then to move into the balcony to be able to take a step out of what are the initiatives, what are the results that we're currently getting in the school, what isn't really working. Because at the balcony level, you have a vantage point that if you don't create that space for yourself, it's gonna be very, very tricky. And so I operate under this framework for my first few years as a principal supervisor. What I did learn though, is I needed to also have additional time. And so I do co-walks also with district leaders, where it could be my talent, my chief academic officer, it could be my math specialist, and I create time which is called like step into the penthouse, where you have the highest vantage point and you get a chance to really like connect the dots to make sure that the work keeps moving. The biggest challenge that I have faced is in the beginning, and I still kind of do, because I have a doer inside of me, is I tend to orient into taking the work from people. And the challenge with that then is that they didn't get a chance to learn it. They actually just did the work. So I have to be very thoughtful in thinking about, am I in the ground floor, am I in the main floor, balcony, penthouse, and we have this common language. That is one of the other, if we step out and become meta about this, like one of the things that you'll learn is that you have to have a common, so when we think about the common bar of excellence under the teaching, the level of excellence, is are you normed on your tools? Are you normed on the language? Are you normed on your look fors? Naming the what is really, really important. But most importantly, it's like identifying the how. How does this work actually play out? And so what we've done is, in my current place that I'm at, we partnered with Relay Graduate School, and so we're using a lot of the tools that Paul Bambrick has put out through Leveraged Leadership, Driven by Data, to really support observation and feedback, as well as data-driven instruction. I'll also say that in my journey up to this point, I also intersected with another great organization, which is New York City Leadership Academy, and they really have some wonderful tools that have actually back mapped out the National Principal Supervisor Professional Standards. If you haven't had a chance to see them, I urge you to pull them from online, take a look at the 8 practices, and identify like which is the zone that you need to really lean in, because if you do all of them, you're not gonna get movement in the first year or in the second year. I would say narrow into, if you wanna do instructional coaching, really define how many observations does that mean that your teachers need to do? What is the framework for how they're collecting data? One of the tools or languages that I use with my leaders, and we're using in the district now, is low inference notes. That's the what. Breaking down into the how is we need to really be clear that we're using just clear, crisp, objective language. We need to make sure that we are using dialogue. We're using numeric, or we're quantifying the data, like how much time did the transition take. And so using that framework helps then us unpack, did we capture the right activity that the students should have been doing, or are we off on the mark? But the fact that we have a framework, it really helps us be on the same page for how to get to the next level of performance. This is exactly what it is. This is how you do principal supervision work right here. Yes, I would say that the most important piece in all of this is the heart. And my principals hear this from me, and I genuinely and honestly communicate to them that I love them as a person, and for me, I need them to be successful. Because if they are internalizing the practices, the moves, I don't have a worry about me not being there and what is actually my school leader doing. This takes time, and this takes intentional conversations for you to be able to build a relationship with your principal. When I first started as a principal supervisor, I was very transactional. I can name that, whereas I walked in, great, let's go see this, here's your next step, and it wasn't really much of a relationship. I soon learned that is part of the work, that is not the work. The bigger part of this is making sure that you have some way of humanizing the work, because I haven't come across a principal yet that doesn't want to be successful, that wants their kids to fail. And so I know we're about 5 minutes in. I'm hoping that some of the information was helpful, but I also want to open up to any question that I can try to answer at this moment as a practitioner with you in the field. Yes, can you please say your name for me?
I'm Avis Williams. I'm superintendent of Selma City Schools.
Thank you for coming, Ms.
Alabama. Low inference notes.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit more about that, what that looks like?
Yes, so low inference notes, again, is a criteria where it's helping my principals think about, like, what are you transcribing when you're in the classroom. It's the process for eliminating teacher has red shoes. I mean, that it's irrelevant to what we're coaching the teacher on. And I would be more than happy to share with you the framework, and whatever note sheet you use, I think that's the irrelevant. The more important thing is making sure that you have an idea of like how to narrow in the live data that we're capturing. So it's like student dialogue or teacher dialogue. It's like timestamps. How many times is the teacher calling a specific student? How many times is the teacher wrote circulating the classroom? Making sure that we're looking at the tasks that the students are doing. So how many students are engaged in it? And again, the most important piece, the first one, is that it's objective, and it's not, well, I think the teacher's doing this, the teacher's great. It's like, we need to be very concrete about what we're seeing.
It's what you can see and hear without adding your own inference.
Thank you, Derek. It's what you can see and hear without adding your own inferences. Thank you so much for that, yes. Economy of language, in action, right there. What other thoughts or wonderings do we have as you go back as a leader with principal supervision? Yes, Henry.
You talked about those, the visits to principals, and you talked about communicating what the purpose of the visit is.
Yes.
And the second item, you had the document to capture. Can you talk a little bit more about what that is, and is it specific to different visits, or what does that look like?
Yeah, really great question. Initially, it was one like concrete, really long form, but now I use a model that was built off of Paul Bambrick. And so we do one deep dive based on student data. Then we do another deep dive called deep dive number 2, which is now around school. And then I have another section at the bottom, which is challenges and barriers, but then I also have a section specifically for just leader time. I have learned over time now that as long as I keep that framework slim and clean, it allows me the flexibility to add to it. I used to have very specific guiding questions, and it became a prescriptive and more transactional conversation, but I share this form with them through Google. And so at the end of the week, the request is that they enter data by the end of the week. I review it, I can add comments on it before we meet. And so that when we meet, we make sure to spend the right amount of time in the right section, which is either with the student achievement data, as well as like any hotspots that are happening into the school. Yeah. Yes, sir.
So you talked
Jose.
about having a clear common language, and you talked about
Economy of language, yes.
That all your principals, central office staff, instructional coaches, and everyone knows. How did you guys go about establishing that? And is there a document, or how did you, in my mind, I call them the banks of the river, right? Here's what we want to see in every classroom. How you do it is going to be a little bit different. So kind of getting to my question.
Yes, I think I understand it. Making sure that everybody in the district, not just in the school, has the common language.
Yeah, around what good instruction looks like, it sounds like. So we should see students at every level, kinder through 12th grade, engaging in dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's one strategy or something that we should be seeing irrelevant of the grade level. So how did you guys go about making sure everybody?
And so I didn't mean to cut you off, but what we're in the process of like really getting deeper with that is through, so my calendar shows like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays, I am in schools all day. But Mondays and Fridays are the times that we set aside to have meeting as an academic leadership team. And that's where we're having conversations about what are the look-fors, what are the practices we need to see. And we're also involved when we're doing district-wide teacher development. So we're helping carry the message of practices and language. And we also inserted we have monthly principal and assistant principal meetings. So we're able to also model and bring in district partners into those meetings, and at the same time model the language that we're looking for. Great. I know I'm at the 1 second mark. I really want to say thank you all so much for coming. I'm passing this over. Yes, I will be here and outside for any additional questions. My name and phone number are there. Please use it freely. I'd love to just continue partnering with you, learning in the Word.